Hello, everybody. Energy is Love podcast. Thank you for listening. You know it. We're aware of it. You talk about it every episode, Craig. I know I do. I can't help it. EnergiesLovePodcast.com. Find all the episodes. Stay up to date with what we're doing with the show. Also find all of our links there for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere that you can find the show. Go to EnergiesLovePodcast.com. Way back on episode 20, you heard my beautiful wife, Stephanie. We sat down and did an episode together. Steph and I are evolution coaches. So if you want to find out more about what we do and how we can help in the evolution of your life and expanding everything that you are so that you can live the fullest and greatest life that you possibly can, there's links to our Facebook page at the Energies Love Podcast website. We have a passion for helping people, and we believe that everybody has the ability to live their fullest life and to their fullest potential. Everybody's in a constant state of evolution, and we can help you in that state. So contact us if you want to find out more. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by As Above, So Below. They are a great support for the podcast. They're located in Roy, Utah. It's an awesome metaphysical shop, store, place to go. They have pretty much everything that you could possibly imagine for your spiritual practice, your ceremonies, your journey in life. As Above, So Below also hosts a lot of events at their shop. On October 30th is the Celebrate Samhain, the original Witches Halloween event. Find out more on their Facebook page at As Above, So Below. There's links to it through our website, but it's a wonderful opportunity to not just experience that shop, but also it's going to be a great event hosted by Gwen Allen, so contact them for more information. The podcast is also brought to you by Crystal Water Float Spa. We know all about Crystal Water Float Spa. We all know about floating because we talk about it so much on the podcast. Floating is an amazing experience. It's going to help you regardless of where you're at in life. At Crystal Water Float Spa, you get to float in the Dream Pod. They're also the nation's only distributor for the Dream Pod. So if you live in the area, go hop in a tank out at Crystal Water. Maybe you're looking to open up your own center. Contact Crystal Water. Go to crystalwaterfloat.com. or go to dream-pod.com and learn more about dream pods, learn more about floating so that you can enjoy all the benefits. On this episode of the podcast, I had a wonderful interview with a beautiful woman who actually resides in Denmark. So it was one of those episodes that we recorded online. We always do the best that we can with those episodes. So if the audio is a little bit off, you'll understand, but typically, we do a great job of editing these episodes. I edit the episodes, so it sounds great. I'm going to butcher her name, but her name is Malue Wittusrose. I don't know how to pronounce it. She does obviously a much better job of pronouncing her own name, but it's Malue Wittusrose. Hopefully that's close enough. She's created Divine Gateways, which there's a Facebook page for, which we have links for. Also their website, divinegateways.dk. She is a medium. She is a holistic healer. She does all sorts of wonderful things in the realm of energy work and spirituality. So it was really interesting to get to speak with her, kind of get a different viewpoint and perspective, even though the fact that she lives in Denmark, there's so many common themes and different aspects of the realm of spirituality that are just consistent and the same. And so it was a wonderful interview, a wonderful opportunity. The modality that she mainly focuses in when she helps people in the process of healing, and I'm going to butcher this one as well, is Belvaspata. We're going to have some links to that as well in the show notes so that you can learn more about that. But she goes in depth into discussing that specific modality and how she works with it and how she helps people in that space. So this was a great episode. I know you guys are going to enjoy listening to it. And hopefully with every episode of the podcast, this one included, you're going to pick up and learn something new. So sit back and relax and enjoy this episode with my beautiful guest, Malue Wittusrose. Well, hopefully that's close enough. Here we go.
You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is the Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The podcast for the universe.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Here we are. Are you ready to go?
I am.
It's not too bad, right? It's pretty easy. We just get to sit back and relax and talk.
Yeah, it's nice.
So I know that I had you pronounce your name before we actually started recording, but in order to do it justice so that our listeners and everybody can actually hear it pronounced correctly, go ahead and pronounce your name for me so everybody knows who we're talking to.
Malue Wittusrose.
Excellent. And then where are you from?
I'm from Denmark.
Have you lived there your whole life?
Yes, I have. In fact, I've been visiting other countries. I've stayed in America, in fact, for a year as an exchange student. 25 years almost ago.
What part of America was it?
That was Washington, the state of Washington, in a small town called Walla Walla. Beautiful place. So
Yeah.
I just absolutely loved it there. I still have contact with the family I lived with, so that's really nice.
Oh, that's fun.
Mm-hmm. But other than that, I've been living in Denmark my whole life.
Well, this is one of the very, very cool things for me doing the podcast is I get to meet people all over the world and I get to chat with them. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's very exciting. I'm very honored to be here.
Let's get into, first and foremost, I guess like your website's divinegateways.dk, correct?
Yes.
And I want to dive right into kind of your whole spiritual journey and the expansiveness of what you've gone throughout your life that's led you up to this point. And then we'll talk a little bit more about kind of what it is that you do with clients and with helping people and all that kind of stuff. But give me an idea, like first and foremost, what's the earliest memory that you have from your life where you had an experience with some sort of energy or spirituality or something like that? What's the earliest thing that you remember?
That's a difficult one because a lot of my childhood, or a big part of it, is sort of in a blur, kind of. There's major parts of it that I just don't remember for specific reasons. But one of the earliest memories I have is I don't remember how old I was. I think maybe 6 or 7. And I was sort of rescuing a little bird that was, or a baby bird, like a little chick.
Mm-hmm.
It was dying, and I felt so sorry for it, and I felt so I don't know. So I held it and I comforted it, and I really wanted to rescue it and save it, so it didn't die. And I could just at that time feel the presence of something, whether it was an angelic being or I don't know, this source energy or this beautiful, comforting energy or presence was there. And it got stronger as the bird actually died. And it left me with this sort of everything is okay feeling, but at the same time I was really, really sad. But I knew in my heart that everything was okay and that somebody or God or whatever would take care of it. And that was the first, experience I had, I think, of something bigger than myself, or this energy that I know is always there. I have some earlier memories, but that's sort of more I'm not sure exactly what happened.
Kind of foggy and hazy.
I'd rather not go into that.
Yeah, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
So you had that sensation, that feeling that and I love the way that you kind of describe it, where I think at 6 or 7 you don't really have words to label it with anything. It's more or less just that feeling associated with whatever that presence, whatever that energy, whatever that stuff was there at the time.
Yes. Yes.
If we fast forward, how did you come into the realm of spirituality and energy work and things like that, where not only did you become aware of those things, but then you really start to kind of work with it and be involved in it?
Well, my entire childhood and up through my teens, I've always had this sense of being different. I always felt I was different, that I didn't belong here, that I was, on the earth, but not of it, that I longed for the stars and I longed for something bigger than myself. I felt like a foreigner, like a stranger here. And then I had this strong, and as a child I had it, a lot, this strong empathic connection with animals especially. And so I could, and flowers and trees and plants, in fact, also. So I could feel their emotional state. I could feel their thoughts. That was more telepathy. I could read their thoughts, or they would send them to me like in images and pictures. And so when I was, I don't know, I think about 14 or 15, something like that, my mother, in fact, introduced me to the Ouija Board. I'm sure you've heard about that. It's not something to play with, I think, in my opinion. But so my mother, she's sort of a psychic medium as well, and so is my sister. And so we started using that a little bit and had the most beautiful experiences with different spirits, with different energies. And I would not recommend anybody using that, but that was sort of, but because it can go really wrong. But it was that was sort of the first experience I had, as a medium. And then when I was in my 20s, I started, reading a lot of books, and I went to these spiritual sort of fairs and things, where you can get psychic readings, and you can have the tarot cards and crystals and healings and all these things. And I felt it was just, I felt in my home environment, it was just something that I really connected with. And so I read a million books, for like 10 years or so. And then when the first, or one of the biggest sort of turn points, or what do you call it?
Yeah, like turning point.
Turning points. It was when I had my daughter, and she's 16 now, so 16 years ago. I was, there were so many spirits in my house. They were walking past the windows. They were making noise outside. They were removing stuff. They were banging the doors, and most of it happened when I was home alone. But in some cases, it happened when other people were there, so they could sort of confirm that this is really not. And so that's really scared me, because I couldn't, I really tried to communicate with them, and I just couldn't. And I think it activated my fear of the unknown, which a lot of us have. And as soon as you turn the lights on and it's not unknown anymore, there's nothing to fear. And so I decided at that point, and I was 29, I decided at that point, okay, this has to stop. I want to know what's going on, and I want to be able to communicate. I want to activate my own, not my fear was the other one, my capacity and my ability to communicate, because I know this is possible. I know this is for me. They have a message for me, because it's a lot. It's so overwhelming. So there's something I had to learn, or have to see there. And so that's when my mediumistic journey started. And so
how did you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no, it's okay.
How did you, so that awareness, that realization that, there's messages there for you, that there's a reason that you're experiencing and seeing. And essentially there's a reason why all of that energy and all of those spirits, whatever it is that we want to call it, were around you at the time. How did you activate that in yourself? Like, how did you decide, or what was it that kind of guided you in that process where you, because I think that's a good thing to talk about, because a lot of people may experience that in some way, shape, or form. And you're right, there's a lot of fear associated with it, but that,
yes.
What did you do, whether it's specifically or kind of in the general sense of how did you kind of activate that ability inside of yourself?
First of all, I started to meditate, and I decided there is nothing to be afraid of. It's just because I cannot physically see it, but I can feel it, and I can sense there's somebody there. I've always had that sense, by the way, of not being alone. I've never been alone. There's always been, beings, beautiful beings around, but also beings that sort of, I could just feel their presence and I couldn't see them, so it scared me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to start meditating. I'm going to connect with my heart. I'm going to connect with the divine and see where it takes me. And that helped a lot. As soon as I started connecting with myself, with my own essence, a lot of it stopped, in fact. And then...
Do you think maybe that was the message that they were trying to get forth to you?
Yes, a big part of the message.
Yeah.
A big part of it, because the overall message was you need to get going. You need to start working with these things. And so I did. I actually entered like a training program, not online. It was, physical, in the physical, like a sort of like an education in mediumship. And I worked with some of Europe's best mediums in Denmark and in England as well, to learn, how to communicate with our, departed beloved ones, and other beings, angelic beings. And so I worked as a medium, and I trained in that field for some years. And then it sort of transitioned into deeper mysticism, metaphysics, and higher beings, sort of what I would call higher beings. I don't mean to sound, it's not a hierarchy. It's just beings of a, higher frequency.
Yeah, different vibration.
Different vibration. Yes, exactly. So in 2010, in February, I met online. I met Almine, who's recognized as the world's greatest mystic and seer. And when I met her online, I just, I saw her website and videos and things, and I said, wow, this is just, for me, it's very sort of advanced mysticism.
What was her name?
And her name is Almine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started studying with her. I have been to many, many retreats here in Belgium and Holland and in America with her and, other students. And so for the last 6 years, that's been my journey. That's been my path. So, yes.
That's pretty amazing. I think it's amazing. Like, I want to go back a little bit and talk more about, because you mentioned that like your mom was like a medium and a psychic in a way, and your sister was too, and whatnot. How was it growing up as far as, was it, I guess, I mean, if your mom was and your sister was, I'm assuming it was probably pretty well accepted in a sense where you didn't have to have that struggle or that, that issue where you thought that maybe you were different or strange and, you were ashamed of what it was that you were experiencing and things like that.
Well, both, because my father, he's not in that sort of, he says he's an atheist, he says, I'm an atheist, I do not believe, and which is, and, Denmark, Danish people in general are very sort of liberal when it comes to religion. So being an atheist is not that far out. Being, having your faith and believing in God and stuff is not that far out either. It's just, it's sort of liberal. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're not that very much religious, but it's a Christian country. But my father, he's an atheist, and he thought it was not ridiculous, but well, yeah, a little bit maybe. And so my mother, she didn't talk very much about it. I didn't either, because nobody seemed to understand, what I felt, the empathy I felt or I had with other beings, especially animals. Nobody seemed to get that, and the feeling that I could, I picked up stuff from other people, from my school friends, and from the environment, and children who have these sort of, many children have these extra antennas, right? They pick up stuff. They're very sensitive, and it can be a process. It can be difficult to discern what is your own and what is other people's stuff. And so I grew up in a sort of, I would say a bit dysfunctional family, to be honest. and so I learned to really tune into what's the energy like here today when I come home from school, for example. How's everybody doing? And then I know how I'm doing.
Yeah.
So everybody else came first and then me. And that led to sort of, it was difficult when I was growing up and when I had my own child to figure out, okay, what is mine and what is everybody else's? Because I didn't know. I didn't know, because I just felt something. Was it mine? I don't know, maybe. And so that took actually a few years. And so for example, when I have sessions with people, when I have clients, it's important for me to sort of ground myself first and know my own energetic balance or state before I start, because that way I know when I pick up stuff, I know it's not mine. I know what it's about. So I know, what's going on energetically.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't necessarily have that space anymore where you're questioning, is this me? Is this the person sitting in front of me? Or
Yes. And also that keeps me from getting drained, because a lot of mediums or clairvoyants or psychics, or, however you want to call them, at least in Denmark, I've heard a lot of, my, in my network and stuff, oh my God, this is so hard. I'm going to drop off the stage after an hour, of doing readings or something, because, this is so hard. And that's not how I experience it. Actually, it energizes me. And I want to say, I don't pick up energy from people. That's not where the energy comes from. The energy comes from when you become a channel, when you sort of embody oneness, when you go into a state of oneness, and when you just let that source energy flow through you. That's what energizes you, right? Not other people. I just want to make that clear.
Well, tell me more about that. I want to know what your kind of, I guess, your belief is, because for me, it's the universe, right? For me, it's that it's not necessarily a singular God or some Christian dynamic or aspect of it. It's just the universe, and it's that big ball of energy that we all stem from and we're all connected to, and all those kind of things. And I agree with you. I think that whether you're a medium or when you're working in that space of energy, especially, not just for yourself, but when you're helping other people in that space, it's really just that conduit aspect where you're connected to whatever it is, that source energy that, that energy stems and comes from. So for me, when I connect and I use it in regards to helping people or in my own space, if I'm meditating or something like that, the way that I, and I don't think it matters what we visualize or think of it or call it or anything like that. But for me, it's always just kind of the universe, and that's where the energy comes from, and that's what I'm connected to, and that's how I'm kind of accessing all of that information. But what about you? Like, do you have some sort of, is it similar in a sense how you look at it or view it, or, your belief system? What is it?
Yes, it's very similar. I feel the same. It's the universe, or actually I'm sort of, I call it the infinite. It's the same thing basically.
Yeah.
The infinite source, or it's not a particular like you said, one God. But having studied with Almine intensely for the last 6 years, I learned a lot about the metaphysical stuff and the cosmology and things like that, and I learned about the different aspects of the infinite, when the infinite expresses as female, creating things, and when it expresses as neutral and as masculine, and there's so much distortions, and there's so much illusion, and there's been so much going on over eons of time, through religion and before that even. So I think it's not to play it safe or anything. It's just I'd rather not cling it to anything in specific, because tomorrow it can change. Tomorrow a new truth reveals itself. So like you, I sort of just connect with the universe or with the cosmos or with the infinite, the I am presence.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me. But that there are, in my belief, beings, specific beings, angel, angelic beings, for example, that I connect with. So, but that's more for specific tasks. For example, when I do healing, spiritual healing, that's assisted by angels, and I have their names, and something called sigils. Have you heard about sigils?
I've heard the word before, the term, but explain to me what you're, in the reference of what you're talking.
This comes from Almine, and sigils are sort of a light language. It's like a cryptic sign, kind of. And it maps out a certain frequency, a certain cosmic frequency. So when you work with this kind of spiritual healing, it's called Belvaspata, and it means healing of the heart, that I work with. You draw these sigils in the air, and you call in specific angels. And angels have sigils too, as their names and as their functions. It's like a gateway to have their telephone number. So when you have an angel's name and you have their sigil, they must respond. They must come when you call them from your heart, obviously, with your intent. So that's a big part of the healing, the Belvaspata healing that I do. It's these sigils, and they're sigils for everything almost. The difference between a symbol, for example, Reiki healing, they use symbols, but the difference between a symbol and a sigil is that a symbol represents something, right? It's not for example, if you have a symbol for a car, like a Ferrari, for example, you see this black horse, I believe it is, right? And you see this, and you associate that with something, with speed, and with maybe the color red, and with things like that. You associate it with the car, but it's not the car. It's just a symbol for it. Yes.
Yeah.
But sigil, it's the direct. It maps out the exact frequency. For example, if you have the sigil for love, if you ask people what is love to you, you will get as many different answers as people.
Yeah.
So, but yes, because it means something different, because we all have a filter and we all have our own experience with it. But when you have the cosmic sigil for love, it maps out the exact cosmic frequency of love.
So help me understand it a little bit more. Like, I'm thinking, like, I kind of understand what you're saying. So it's kind of like a light frequency, some sort of vibration and things like that you would use to, whether you want to think of it as calling upon those angels or activating or whatever the case may be. But is it stuff that you'll just do like through, not necessarily through meditation, but in that space of when you're working in that healing space? Is it something that you're just calling forth? Is it something that you're writing down, or do you know what I mean? What is it exactly?
I have it in writing. I have it in writing, and so I draw them in the air, the sigils, and I have the angels' names, and I call in the angel that carries that specific frequency and that specific consciousness. Because light is actually accessed information. So light and consciousness is sort of similar, right? And so that's why I call it to heal with light and frequency, because it's conscious. These sigils are conscious. You can communicate with them. So, and they evolve all the time as cosmos evolves. So, but I call them from a state of oneness. I go into, a very expanded state and connect with my client and go into oneness. And from that space, that's when I draw the sigils and call in the angels. And I can feel their presence. And usually my clients can feel their presence as well. So, and it's funny because, earlier when I was working with deceased people or dead people, it's very, very healing for people. I don't know if you've ever had, like a contact from the other side where you could really feel the person's energy. I mean, it can really mend deep scars and deep wounds. So it's for me, it was very, how do you say that? I was very grateful to be able to work that way with people, but it's just sort of evolved into what I'm doing now.
Do you still have that aspect that comes through sometimes where you will connect with somebody that's passed over?
Yes.
I think this is fascinating. Tell me again how you pronounce the Belvaspata.
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 Listeners can look it up on the internet. Belvaspata, if they're interested in this, and Almine, she has a lot of stuff. So yes. Tell
me, what are some of the things, like what are some of the it's not that you necessarily have to share, personal clients' information or stories or anything like that, but what are some of the really cool things that you've seen happen through that space, through that energy, when you've been able to kind of call upon those angels and use those sigils and things like that?
Well, there have been different results for people. But one thing I like to share is that it's important to not have expectations. It's like letting it go. It's like manifestation. When you want to create something, you visualize what you want and then you let it go, right?
Yeah.
And with this kind of energy work, I believe it's important to not have agenda, because as soon as you have an agenda, you enforce your will on life, which is essentially black magic, and you don't want to do that. So even if it's good intended, right? So I don't have an agenda. I just sort of, it's this saying, let go and let God, sort of. I expand and then I call in the angels, and they know, the highest good for people, because I have no clue what is the highest good for people, right? So one time I tried with my father, in fact, because he suffers from what's it called, anxiety. Yeah, angst.
Anxiety. Anxiety.
Yeah. And so I offered, okay, I can do this session for you. I mean, if you're willing to sort of be open, because I don't want to waste my time. No, because I know he doesn't believe in stuff like this. And he said, no, I've tried everything, so I'd like to try this. And so I did this session for him. And what he experienced just really made me, wow, it almost made me cry, because, he did not have any expectations whatsoever, and neither did I. But he experienced this extreme calmness, and he was having like an attack, like a
panic attack.
Yeah, like a panic attack or an anxiety attack. And he was almost going to rush for his pills, and I said, please, can you wait and let me see, if we can do something. And so it eased out, and he said he has never ever tried to be able to calm a panic attack or an anxiety attack without pills ever, and he's like 70 now. So this was really, really, a big thing, and afterwards he sort of doesn't have that so much anymore. But the other thing that happened, which I had no idea, is that he suffers from sleep apnea, where he sleeps with this machine, and I didn't know that. And so he called me the day after, and he said, you're not going to believe this. I did not have my machine on, and I slept for like 8 hours in a row. This has not happened in 25 years. He sleeps like for 10 minutes and then wakes up. And this machine is just awful to be wearing. And he said he was in heaven. I mean, he was exalted. He said, I cannot believe this. So this was a very, that was a big thing because I had no idea. And that's not what we addressed at all.
Yeah.
It was actually the anxiety, but this was the sort of the side effect. And so sometimes I am very humble when it comes to what results we're going to get, because what do I know what is the best for people? But of course, when people, come and say, I have diabetes, or I feel emotionally challenged, or I'm in the middle of a divorce and I don't know what to do, things like that, emotional trauma and emotional challenges of all kind. A lot of people, they experience changes to the better. I haven't met anyone who did not, in fact.
Yeah, that they do have some benefit or some, like a side effect, like you described with your dad, where we were going in trying to focus and work in regard to his anxiety, but now he's sleeping better.
Yeah. And so something like addictions, for example, that's also a good one. I tried that. There are different protocols, and addictions for, you can be addicted to, all sorts of things, smoking, obviously, and cola, sugar, carbs, and shopping, drugs, anything. And I have really good results with that as well.
Using this modality, helping people through those addictions? Yes. That's interesting. That's neat.
But what I really not focused, but what I can feel stir in me now is community and getting together, because I feel, for the past 10, 15 years where I've been, in this new age community, which has been actually for a longer time, 20 years, but especially the last 10 or 15 years, people have gone each in their own way. And I think it's time, I'm sure you agree, that we'll sort of come together, and that we stand together, and that we unite through the heart. And that has really been stirring within me for the last year or so. So I don't know where it's going to take me, but there's something there.
I agree with you. I think that's I don't necessarily want to say it's a common thing, but a lot of people that I talk to, whether they're on the podcast or, in the community, the New Age community that we're kind of in, I guess, it's kind of one of those common things where a lot of people are being drawn to that aspect and thinking about how can we come together as a community and create more things together and healing things together, and with the intention of not just helping, individuals and people who may not necessarily, be awake or, have some sort of spiritual understanding of the greater cosmos and things. But I think it is really common. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think that's kind of a push right now?
That's a good question, because it's not, new. I mean, the words are not new as such. Oh, you have to stand together and come together. I mean, we've known that for years and years, but it's sort of like the energy's there now. We're being supported. I feel that a supportive surge of energy that are bringing us together. Sort of like it's divine timing.
Yeah.
It's sort of like it's going from something with your head, it's a mental concept, to feeling it in your heart, in the body, and that's where it's gotten to me. For me now, I can feel it in my body. My whole body tingles just as we speak about it. I think it's because it's necessary, and if we want to ascend, you're familiar with ascension and the whole process of, lifting the consciousness of the earth and all of her people and all of her beings, right?
Uh-huh.
You have talked about this, I'm sure, on your podcast.
Yes.
And I believe we need to sort of stand together and do it together. It's like the 100th monkey effect, or the critical mass. We are about to reach critical mass. And I think that's why I'm being pushed, or I'm being guided, or being called to sort of this community feeling, this unity, this oneness kind of feeling. So we can tip the scale and bring the world forward in a more peaceful and harmonious way, because it's not looking good in many places, right? So I think that's what's going on currently.
I would agree with you.
Globally. It's not just me, but I think many people are feeling it.
Is it real similar in regards to kind of because I think it's fascinating. I was going to ask you as well, as far as like, I guess we'll just use that phrase or that term, the New Age community, or the concepts and the mindsets of things that you are involved with and the people that you work with and associate with and things like that. Is it huge? Like, is it very well accepted in Denmark and or is it something that's kind of still on the outskirts, kind of like a subculture of society?
It's very accepted. I mean, when I say very accepted, I think it's more accepted than so many other countries that I heard of, where people still, sort of don't talk too much about it, and only with their closest friends, and they're afraid to even say out loud energy or aura, or I've heard about something called chakras. What do you think about that? And
yeah,
things like that. I mean, but 10 years ago, it was a lot more difficult to talk about these things. But now everybody, at work and everybody, they either have experienced something themselves or they know someone who has, either a sort of like a miracle or like some kind of blessing, or it can also be some, a spirit, or the children experience weird stuff, and people talk more about it, which I really, really appreciate. And I'm so happy that it's more out in the open now, because a lot of us have been sort of afraid to speak up and to talk about it. And I certainly didn't. Oh my God. Talking about spirits and talking about these things. Yeah. But it's more accepted now.
Yeah.
And so people are not all that different when it comes down to it. They just feel like it because they're afraid to speak about their feelings and their sensations and their intuitive sort of knowledge. A lot of people, they know a lot of stuff, they just don't think they do because they haven't read it in a book or training or something. They just know.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we kind of like when we talk with people, and whether it's in a session or working with clients or a fair or something like that, it's if you have somebody that sits down in front of you who may not necessarily haven't studied in books or gone to seminars or trainings and things like that, but they have an inkling of, I want to know more. Typically what I'll do is I'll try to address something that they already are experiencing, and then connect it with, maybe that's your solar plexus or something like that. So then they have they have the realization of, oh yeah, I'm already connected and I'm experiencing some sort of energy. Do you have, because for me,
interesting.
Well, I always try, one of the things I always tell people about is it's like the whole thing about your gut instinct, and people are, when you get butterflies in your belly, or that sensation when you have kind of that gut instinct that something may be wrong, or suddenly something has shifted, and you walk into the room, or you're driving somewhere and you have that weird gut instinct where you need to turn right or you need to slow down or something like that, and then you avoid the accident or whatever the case may be. But then it's the realization of, well, that's your specific chakra located in that part of your body, and it's picking up on this vibration and blah blah blah. We go into the whole spiel of how that kind of works. But I think a lot of times when people start to realize, oh yeah, I do experience that, they just don't have the parameters to, yes. they can't put it in those parameters of what we're talking about necessarily.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting that you can relate it to certain chakras. Are you, what is your area of expertise? Is that I'm just curious. Are you're also a spiritual healer and teacher? And
yeah, my wife and I work together. We're evolution coaches, which
that's what it is. Yes.
We help people in the process of kind of reaching their fullest and highest potential and things like that. But as far as, we're both intuitive, we're both empaths, we both have that natural ability to connect with energy and work with energy. My wife's really good when it comes to like Reiki and all those kind of physical forms of movements of energy and stagnant and blocked energy and all that kind of stuff. Like the specific modality that we trained in, or, that we went through and kind of had a formal education, I guess would be a better way to describe it, is Theta Healing. I don't know if you're familiar with that, or if you've ever heard of Theta.
Yes, I am.
But
that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And we, it was obviously it's something that our spiritual journey led us down that path. And in the end, I think that all those modalities, all the different things, because as you're describing, and I just butcher these names and I totally apologize, but the Belvaspata,
Belvaspata.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many similar aspects to all of these different type of things. And that's for me in the process of my journey and experience and learning and talking with people. It's like just tools. They're all just tools. And I resonate with this tool and you resonate with that tool. But we're all accessing that same source of energy out there.
Yes, exactly. They're tools, and you're absolutely right. I agree. It's a matter of finding what you resonate with. Mm-hmm. Because if you want to have the fullest sort of benefit from it, it's a good thing to resonate with it and be in alignment with it. Because the modality of itself is not going to do the work. It's a combination. It's I believe it's alchemy. It's the practitioner and it's the modality or tool that you're using and source. And these three things together creates the alchemy of change. And so if you're out of alignment with your heart, with whatever you do, for example, when you're in a session with a client, whatever it is, whatever modality it is, if you're not in alignment with your heart and with the tool that you're using, I don't believe you're going to get the same result or as good a result as you could have had if you used another tool that you resonate more with. But that's just my private theory. So I believe it's really important to be to do what your heart calls you to do and use that tool that you resonate with. So
yeah. Since we're kind of on the subject of tools, I want to go back because you talked about back when you were a kid and your mom playing around isn't the right word, but using a Ouija board.
Yes.
It's kind of funny because the other day my wife and I were having this same conversation about the Ouija board, and sometimes I kind of play devil's advocate when we discuss and argue about things where it's not necessarily my belief. It's just I like to debate topics, I suppose. But I think about the Ouija board itself, and then I think about, are you familiar with like pendulums and things like that?
Oh yes.
And sometimes people will have boards that they use for their pendulum, whether it's just a simple yes, no, or sometimes they'll actually have an alphabet on this board, and then they'll use their pendulum to get guidance and understanding of whatever it is that they're struggling with, right? Mm-hmm. And so in my mind, the way that I think about it, it's like, well, it makes sense that the Ouija board is no different. It's simply just a tool that is used to access energy. It's no different than cards or crystals, or, I mean, it's all the same in my mind. And the only difference with the negative connotation or that evil bad side that people will place upon using the Ouija board really is just the intention and the perspective, where if we don't have that intention or that perspective, then we're not necessarily going into that space with that intention, right? So we're not going to necessarily access some sort of evil spirit or some sort of darkness, because the board itself is simply just a tool. It's the intention of the person that's using that tool. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
I hear what you're saying, and I agree mostly, but there's something about the Ouija board, in my experience and in my opinion, there's something about the Ouija board that makes it different from other tools like crystals and cards, oracle cards or tarot cards or whatever cards you use, because I have used all of them, and the Ouija board is, I don't know what it is, but it accesses the deeper subconscious quicker than tarot cards and crystals and angel cards and stuff like that. And it, when you do oracle cards or whatever tool by yourself, it's by yourself. And you're right, it's about intention. It's about the energetic state that you're in. But when you use the Ouija board, usually you're more people, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a mix of people's intentions and subconscious intentions, because the quality of the information that you get varies a lot with the people that are sitting in that circle. I remember it's not that long ago. My sister, she's a medium as well, and there was another lady there who's also a very strong medium. And then my sister's son, he's only 21. But I could feel as soon as we started and he entered the room, boom, it went all, I could just feel this is not good. We have to stop, because his presence, I mean, he sort of, I don't know what he's subconsciously called in or made access to or whatever that I picked up. I said, this is not good. We have to stop this. So I can sense where the energies are coming from. See what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what it is about the Ouija board, because I've also had some beautiful experiences, but that were other people there. And so you're probably right. It's about the intention, but it's also about the subconscious traumas and other things that are there that they're not necessarily aware of.
Yeah, I agree.
And also because it's focused attention and intention on the glass. And when, for example, for people, they focus their energy on the glass, and there's of course no spirit inside the glass. It's just a tool. It's a focal point.
Mm-hmm.
But the energy builds up very quickly, and that's why you can move the glass around without even touching it almost. So it's a different way of working with the energy, I feel, than when you do the cards or. So that's why I'm thinking, if you're new and you don't have you sort of like an experience with working with energy, I think Ouija board is sort of have to be a little bit careful or make sure that the people that you do it with are skilled in energy work. This is not the same with cards, for example, especially not when there are beautiful pictures on them and beautiful little statements and supportive affirmations and things like that, because it will keep your vibration high just by looking at it, and you will not go into sort of like a trance state or like a meditative state, which you're more inclined to do when you work with the Ouija board.
See, I think it goes, and this is my personal opinion, right? It's not in any way, shape, or form am I like disputing what you're saying or anything. This is just my opinion. For me, in the way that I think about energy, that's why it's the Energy is Love podcast, because for me, energy is just love. It's the purest, highest form of it just is love. And I don't believe that there is bad energy or negative energy. I think energy itself is a frequency and a vibration, and there's sometimes higher vibrations and there's sometimes lower vibrations, but they're all the same energy. And it's not until we come in with our intention, our thought, our programming associated with certain things that we view a low vibration as something that would be evil. And it simply comes from, whether we want to think of it as, a childhood where our mother grew up telling us about evil spirits and we can't do this and we can't do that, or even a deeper kind of programming, in a sense, where there's so many common things in society that I think over time they almost kind of get ingrained into our consciousness and into our DNA, in a sense, to where we all have that, I don't know, that fear associated around certain things. And for me, it's just a vibration. It's just an energy. And so there's not a good or a bad. It just is. And so I think the intention and the focus put and placed on certain things, and we're talking about the Ouija board, but it can be with anything. You see people who use energy in a negative way, who access it and use it kind of maliciously. That doesn't, in my mind, mean that there's evil energy out there that they're harnessing. It's simply just the intention and do you know what I mean? The mindset behind that person that's accessing it.
Yes. And I agree. And it also turns out, once, for example, when you, in your childhood, you can feel something was bad for you, say, right? In your childhood. But then when you look at it again, or you shift your attitude towards it, or you work through it, all of a sudden it's not bad anymore. It's just an experience. So I agree. It's also a matter of, intention and agenda, but also a matter of attitude, because people can experience the same thing in their day, and one person is all cheerful about it and the other person is not. It's a matter of, how you view it and your attitude, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I'm sitting there thinking about, like somebody would have an experience that we could relate to some sort of energy aspect, and one person is going to be completely devastated by it, and the other person is going to be completely inspired. And so it's like, those are the things that really make me question whether there's good and bad, because in the end, I think it just is a matter of how we interpret and view not just the world around
Yes.
us, but the greater expansiveness of, do you know what I mean? Energy. It's like,
Yes.
how could there be a
Yes.
heaven and a hell when it just depends on how you look at it?
Exactly. And, the thing is also that we this matrix or whatever you call it, that we live in is we live in duality. We exist in duality. But if you sort of, so that's how I'm going to say this. When you transcend that, there is no good and evil or good or bad or anything. It's just, it's two sides of the same coin. There is just, like you said, there is just one. There is just oneness. There is just source. Really, it's just a matter of perspective. It's a matter of, if the way I look at it sometimes is we're each a unique facet of a beautiful diamond, or we're a beautiful diamond ourselves, and we have different facets through which the light shines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're all clear, the light will go right through. But if there's a little spot there, for example, a childhood trauma or some sort of illusion that we have or something, there's a little spot there, it will cast a shadow. And so when we see something, shadows, let's just call it that, outside of ourselves, what we really want to do is look inside ourselves. See, what is it that I'm not seeing? Where is it that I haven't released some sort of belief system, or what is it that I haven't healed yet? Because I'm seeing this outside of myself. And this is based on the fact, or the I don't know, the knowledge or the experience, the heartfelt sort of, this is my truth, that we're all connected and that we're all one. In fact, I'm one with everything. So what I see outside of myself is really part of me, right? So it makes sense to look at yourself if you want to change the circumstances or what you see outside of yourself. If you want to shift the reality, you need to look inside yourself. That's my sort of truth.
Well, it's a very good truth.
So, yeah. And so if I see something, so-called bad outside of myself, I created it somehow, or there's something within me that I haven't seen yet, because otherwise it wouldn't be there. Because I believe everything is in perfection. And if I judge it and place value on something, that's when we create even more duality, and that's when we create pain. And it's also the most difficult thing to not do, to not put value judgments on anything, and just because everything has equal value, otherwise it wouldn't be there. That doesn't mean that everything is as life enhancing as everything else, but it all has equal value, I believe. So I always try to look within, and also I think that's very fascinating. The dream symbols and the symbols in your environment, because it's really the language of the environment. It's really yourself talking to yourself. It's a way of being guided and receiving guidance from your higher self and from source or from the universe. So I do that a lot in my sort of day-to-day life.
See,
I notice signs and symbols outside of myself. So,
yeah. And I think about that all the time. That's one of those aspects of things that I think about, because I think that we're all connected, right? And we all stem from the same source, and we're all essentially, just the same energy in different places and states and forms and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, I think, because you point out like signs and symbols and, synchronistic things that will happen throughout your day that will catch your eye and start to appear more and more often and things like that. And I think it is just yourself communicating with yourself. Because in the end, and for me, it's the same where if I think of like my spirit guide or my angel guides or whatever the case may be that we might call it, I really think that's just another form of myself communicating with myself and helping myself.
Yes, I agree. I believe that too. From your lower self standpoint, or just your everyday today sort of perspective, it's sort of nice to know, oh wow, there's angels out there. It's really nice, it's comforting. But when it all, at the end of the day, I believe you're right, it's really myself. Because we are all things. We are actually like a consciousness superimposed over all that is. We're a huge infinite being that's never been born and never will end, and it's just unfathomable. I can't even so
it is unfathomable.
Yeah, it is the beauty of it, and the it's just it's incredible. I can't wrap my mind around it. So I know that it's really myself. But then again, it's just sort of nice to say, oh, there's a butterfly. It's flying right in front of my face. Okay, there's something here. A few months ago, I had 2 cats, and one of them had brought a rat to my back door, and it was dead, and it was lying there. I'm not afraid of rats. I had rats as pets when I was a child, so it doesn't bring out that creepy feeling within me. I just thought, oh, poor rat. I don't feel. Many people, they do not like rats, right?
Yeah.
So, but I've never seen in this area. In fact, I don't know in my entire life if I've ever seen a rat. Out a wild one out in nature. So it was very significant somehow. Okay, because mice and rats signify hidden things or secrets. So something is being hidden from me. So there's some secretive stuff going on. That's what it signals or symbolizes. I must say I haven't found out what it is yet, but these are the things that happen. So I think it's a way of, it's part of taking your power back and to not be a victim, because we really need to take our power back and really need to acknowledge how powerful we really are as beings of light and beings of love, that we can use and utilize what's there for us, that we're not just a victim of circumstances, that we actually created it. And how, okay, so if I created this, what is it telling me? How can I change it? If I don't like what I see, how can I change it? And not just say, oh, well, I hope something better comes along. So
it's really interesting. I think it's interesting that you look at, a rat that your cat brings to the back door as a sign that, you have to dig deeper and there's something that's being hidden from you, or maybe that you're not necessarily looking at. And I think that's so awesome. I think that's,
and it's something from my past, because it's the back door. Had it been the front door, it would be something coming in.
Yeah, that's a good
way to
look
at it. But it was on the back door. Yeah, it was on the back door. And so it has something to do with my past. And I right now I can't remember if I solved it. I don't think I did, in fact, or I left it or something. It was just a very big sign. Sometimes it can be birds, for example, like the crows. They symbolize the path of power. And sometimes if they're right in your face or they catch your attention somehow, if it's sort of out of the ordinary, I think it's a good idea to pay attention. It can also be symbols in your dreams. I'm not a dream, interpreter, expert or something at all. I just know that the symbols and dreams that you have are trying to tell you something. And this reality, when we in the physical here during the day, when we are, I was going to say alive, when we are awake, I mean, that's in fact also a dream. It's just a more lucid dream, you could say.
You think so?
Yes, because we're not truly awake. We're getting there. We are awakening, I believe, but we're not truly awake yet. We haven't transcended duality yet. We haven't resurrected yet. We haven't completely, or most of us anyway, haven't completely merged soul and body and inner and outer space, which is the process that some of humanity is going through right now. Mm-hmm. And the soul world, that's where our loved ones go when they die, but that's also where our dream body goes at night when we sleep. It's the same thing. The dream and the dream body and the soul is the same thing. So when we sleep, we go to the soul world. That's why we can also connect with our deceased loved ones, because we're at the same level. We're in the same dimension.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Gosh, it's
so
so
and that's
interesting.
The inner space. Yeah. I meet my brother a lot. He died many years ago, and my grandmother died 5-6 years ago. She often comes to me here. I can smell her, and she also calls my name, and I can smell also the food that she used to make. So sometimes she comes to visit me, just to sort of visit me. But I visit with her a lot during the dream time, because that's the plane or the dimension where we can both access, because it's the same place. Same space.
Yeah.
So because a lot of people ask me, wow, I saw my whatever mother or grandmother, whatever, while I was sleeping, and it felt so real. I can't let it go, and oh my God, something. And said, well, it felt real because it was real. And I find that so fascinating that when we die, we just let go of our physical body, but we still have our consciousness, we still have our personality, we still have everything.
It's so fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
I just get lost thinking about all these things. Sometimes I start to get my head will start to ache, and then it's like, okay, we have to step outside of crazy cosmic things for a while.
Yeah, I do that sometimes too. And then I go out in my little garden and I start doing something, to just ground myself. Yeah. Grounding is really important. Don't you find that?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. And going out in nature and just connect with the trees and with the earth and with the grass and the flowers. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your daughter. You said she was 16, is that right?
Yes, she's 16.
Does she have similar, I don't know if we want to call them abilities, or have you noticed that she's open to all of these different things and is starting to realize that she's part of it as well and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, she is. She's very intuitive. She knows things. She just knows suddenly things, and she's very quick. I'm on one hand, on the other hand, and she's just straight to the point. And very. I feel this, and this is how it is. So when she was little, she had a lot of visitors and a lot of had to sometimes calm her, but also say it's okay. It's just because you sense them, and but there hasn't been anybody visiting her for the last 7 years or so. So, but she knows things, and she's very intuitive, and she's, perfectly okay with me doing all this. She thinks it's exciting, but it's just normal for her.
Does she struggle with it at all? Like, is there ever a time that she has an aspect of it that she and the reason I'm talking about it is because I think a lot of times I think about my own kids and other children that I've talked to and worked with and teenagers and people that you also talk to, is it's like sometimes because I think, and I'm going to get sidetracked here, but I think when we're born, I think we're 100% connected. I think we have all of these abilities and connections, and because I think we came and stemmed from that source, so we're 100% connected to it. Incredibly empathic and intuitive, and can see and feel and hear all these different energies and things like that. And then life happens, gets in the way, and those abilities, get clogged up and tuned down and whatever we want to call it. But then as we start to wake back up, or as we start to experience other things, sometimes I think that kids specifically struggle in that space because they're scary, because they're frightened, because sometimes they don't necessarily understand and they don't have a context or a frame of reference.
Yes.
Has your daughter struggled with that? And if so, how have you helped her with it? Or is she just totally like, yeah, this is all normal stuff because mom does it, so I don't have an issue?
Most of the time, it's just normal for her. It was when she was younger, and there were, I would say, spirits that came to visit her. Some of them were sort of, I don't know, they were attracted to her light, as they usually are. They're attracted to the light that people emit. And that scared her, and she would call me and say, Mom, there's a guy on a motorcycle up and he died in the motorcycle accident, and he looked that way. So he showed herself, as he looked when he died. And that was not nice. It scared, it really scared her. And so I told him that, this is not okay for children, and things like that. But since then, she has been afraid of motorcycles. And so this is not good. But she's 16 now, so she's okay. But just talking with her whenever she experienced things has helped her a lot. And also with, the other children at school and what she felt about other people, she picks up stuff like I did. And we talk about that. And I teach her how to sort of, not shut down, but leave it out and, put a protective sort of shield around herself and be grounded and just, so she stays in her own sort of bubble of light and her own energy sphere. And so that she doesn't let anybody else, interfere with that.
How do you help her? How do you help her discern between what's hers and what's not? Because I think that's really common, and not just with kids and teenagers, but adults too, that are starting to kind of reawaken.
Yes, exactly. Well, the bubble thing that I just said is a good one, because if you visualize yourself being inside a huge egg, for example, like an oval that goes beneath your feet and about, how much is it? Maybe 20 inches or 30 centimeters, something like that, 20 inches above your head. And you're inside that and you strengthen it every day, being inside this white light. And just say to yourself, you can say that in a language that kids would understand, but you just make them say or make them visualize and feel, okay, this is my safe space. And I only allow what serves my highest good to come through this shell or this white light. That's a good starting point, because what you visualize and what you think, it becomes, it is so, right? So if you visualize and say, okay, I have this around my body, you have it. That's how it is.
Yeah.
So that's a good exercise for everybody, but for children especially. But on the other hand, it's also important to not sort of activate their fear. Oh my God, do I need to protect myself from something? No, you don't. You just need to activate or strengthen your inbuilt sort of protective shield. So like you have skin that protects your organs and your insides. It's not that you cannot communicate and be in touch with the outside world. It's just a matter of having a boundary, which is healthy. You need healthy boundaries.
That's a good comparison.
Starting with the energetic boundary, you've come come quite a way, I think.
Yeah.
Because you also, of course, need to talk. I've done that also with my daughter. What can you say when they say like this to you, and what did you feel, and then what did that make you feel, and what did you respond, blah blah blah, and we can talk about it that way. This is regular sort of parenting and upbringing of children, right? To communicate with them in a supportive and acknowledging way. But the energetic work is also important, especially with this new generation of children that are highly sensitive. Some of them are very sensitive, really, really sensitive, and have trouble socializing. They have trouble, in school and in their families, and they just, you can put a diagnosis on them or not. It's just, some of them they just have a different grid structure. Their mind works in a different way. And a lot of children also have, I believe, they come with a different set of codes in their DNA.
Yeah. That
will be activated throughout their childhood and in their adult life, because they have a mission. They have a purpose of being here as well as we do. Theirs is just different. And so they need the short keys, or the shortcuts, and the hotkeys, that's what I was going to say, and the shortcuts. And if we can give that to them, and if maybe we don't understand it, and say, oh my God, I don't really get this, but if you can just provide the space for them to be and to unfold, I think we do them a huge service.
Yeah, you just get to sit back and watch and see what they do, see what they create.
Yes, because oh my God, many times I sit there, I've been sitting there and thinking, oh my God, how does she do this? She's so not like me. It's incredible. She's a lot more outgoing and a lot more confident in the way her whole, it's just so different. And sometimes I'm tempted to put her in a box, like, oh, this is good and this is not good. But it's not a good way to go, I think.
Yeah.
So giving her the tools to handle, and also to handle, especially at her age, to handle what I would call mass hysteria sometimes, and the mass programming that's going on through television, through, when she sees Paradise Hotel, and say, can you please stop watching that, because it's just, and then I talk with her about why I think this is bad TV and what it does to her, and how it affects her thinking and her emotional, and her self-worth and everything else, at that age. And she gets that. I say, oh my God, I can see that. And the manipulation that's going on. And so we talk a lot about that, not to make her think the way I think, but to teach her how to think for herself and to feel and to trust what she feels intuitively.
Yeah.
Even though she can't put it into words. I have a son, also he's 8 years old, and he's very, he's very sensitive. And I try to do the same with him, but he struggles a lot more than Sarah did, because he struggles to find the words for what he's experiencing. And I'm trying to help him with that. because like you said before, they don't have the context. I mean, he doesn't have the brain is not developed to that point yet. He doesn't have, the frontal lobes are not fully developed yet. And so he can't process cognitively what it is that he experiences. And so I'm trying to help him with that. And then maybe you think, oh, I have maybe weird children. I don't. They're perfectly well adjusted.
No, I don't think you have weird children at all.
They're doing really well in school and with their friends and everything else. It's just things are more acceptable here. When it comes to, I feel this, or do you believe in angels, and what happens when the cats die, and things like that. We can talk about that in a perfectly normal way, sort of, or like any other discussion we can have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we drive our teenage girls nuts because it's, they come home with a problem or an issue. We have 3 teenage girls, and my standard answer to them initially, and it's kind of just a joke at this point, but I'm like, oh, it's just energy. It's going to be fine. It's just energy. And they don't like that anymore. They want actual, they don't like that anymore. They want like actual concrete advice and direction and understanding of, why this is happening, or why it's not cosmic things. It's just simple, day-to-day life of a teenager. I'm like, don't worry about it. It's energy. You'll get over it. Yeah.
Sometimes they just want a straight answer, or just a real down-to-earth practical answer. Yeah. I'm by myself with my kids. I'm a single mother. So it can be a lot. especially when there are other things you want to do also. Right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are sort of, which I sort of envy, kind of, that's enough for them. They have their family, they have their children, they have their job, they come home, and that's enough for them, and that sort of, but that has never been enough for me. I want to know more. I want to experience more, and I want to dive into things and meditate and go in nature and do traveling and and discover, what lies ahead and what's next. And and sometimes it just takes, these things take time, and so I've often experienced I don't have that time, and then I get frustrated. Oh my goodness, I don't have time for all the things that I want to do.
Well, I think we are always right where we are supposed to be. So exactly. So I'm not complaining at all. I'm so grateful for my children. They're beautiful. Yeah, I'm not. But and they're part of our journey, right? For sure. Yeah. They're definitely here for a reason. Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I cannot thank you enough. I think it's the coolest thing ever to get to connect with people on the other side of the world. Oh, it's been wonderful. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much for having me. So what's the best way for people to contact you, reach you, find all your stuff? I think the easiest way is probably through Facebook, because I have a page there. I also have a regular profile with my name, Malue Wittusrose, but I have my Facebook page, which is Divine Gateways, and I post both in English and in Danish there, and people can write me a message there if they would like. They're also welcome to go to divinegateways.dk, which is my website, and it's in Danish. But if you have the Google Translate, you can click that and it will translate it, but that's not maybe optimal, So it worked pretty well. That's how I clicked the translate, and it worked pretty well. It was pretty neat. Okay. So I haven't created my English website yet, but so I'm working on it. Well, we'll be sure to list all those on the show notes. That's what it's called. So people will have the links to all those different things and whatnot. But once again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're sure welcome. Thank you very much, Craig. Yes, and everybody out there, please go out and have a beautiful, wonderful day. I long for the stars, and I long for something bigger than myself. It can be difficult to discern what is your own and what is other people's stuff. If you want to shift the reality, you need to look inside yourself. I believe it's alchemy. It's the practitioner, and it's the modality or tool that you're using, and source. And these three things together creates the alchemy of change.